God's commands are man's demands. By Prentice Mulford. Life is a science which has no end. There is no stage in existence when we can say we're finished. The thing we imagine we comprehended and understood today may have to the awakened and ever awakening mind a new meaning and interpretation tomorrow, and will have still newer and newer meanings and interpretations in the future. The thing bringing us evil today may bring good tomorrow. That depends upon our knowledge of its use. Gunpowder is dangerous in the hands of a boy. It is not so dangerous as used by a skilled blaster. Again, the thing we think to be for good today, we may find an evil tomorrow. The word to which we attach a certain meaning today may have an entirely new meaning tomorrow. Ideas cannot be expressed merely by the sound of certain letters and syllables. As our mental vision grows clearer and clearer, every word in the language will have a new meaning for us. These meanings cannot be found in the dictionary. There is a language of idea which words can never fully express, and no dictionary can keep pace with it. It is impossible for man to ask of the infinite in the tone of an abject beggar or a groveling suppliant when he realizes that he is a part of the infinite. As a part of the measureless whole, he can demand. As a part, he cannot command that power which has no beginning, no ending, and is not compassible by any human mind. But to get more and more of God in us, to be a greater and a growing part of the Supreme, to get true knowledge from all things about us, we must have a mind ever in the attitude of demand. The word demand, as often used in the White Cross series, does not imply calling on the supreme power in the tone of the robber who demands your money or your life. It implies no insolence or lack of reverence. It does imply an imperative call on our part to be one with God, the infinite, so vast that the mind reels when it vainly endeavors to comprehend the power which has no ending in space. Every sentence in the Lord's Prayer has in it the character of demand. Such phrases as, "Thy kingdom come," "Give us this day our daily bread," "Lead us not into temptation," and "Deliver us from evil," are imperative. The phrases "give us," "lead us," "deliver us" have not the tone of abject supplication. They have the tone of demand. They are in accordance and consistency with the Christian precept, "Ask and ye shall receive, knock and it shall be opened unto you." The words of Christ, "Thy will be done on earth as in heaven," do not beg of the infinite as a special favor that his designs and plans be carried out on earth as in heaven. They were earnest demands on Christ's part, made to a power and wisdom which he recognized as infinitely greater than his own. When a soul is thoroughly awakened and cries out, "What shall I do to be saved?" that question is past the bounds of supplication. It is in the spirit of earnest demand. That is the spirit the supreme power requires of us before it can give us what it insists on giving us and what the supreme mind knows we most need. When you would do an individual a genuine good, you want that person to thoroughly appreciate the value of what you have to give and to be keenly alive to the good it will do him or her. His is then an earnest demand for such favor. The infinite requires of us the same mood of earnest demand for the good he will do us. Does it imply lack of respect for us to say, as a part and a belonging of the infinite mind, I demand of that exhaustless whole all the wisdom and power that I can receive and appropriate for the hour. I demand still higher and more God-like qualities, for in proportion as God makes better and happier the part I express of Him, the more can I, that limited yet ever-growing part, reflect back such glory. I must act out and express whatever of the infinite I am. There is no supplication in the word must. In the working of what are called miracles, when Christ put forth in words a force or thought for their accomplishment, He did so in the spirit of demand. I say unto thee, arise, were His words in raising the dead. To the elements, when He calmed the storm, He says, peace, be still. Ages before Christ, results accomplished seemingly without the domain of natural law came in response to the imperative demand of certain individuals. Moses demanded the waters of the Red Sea to retire and to make a passage for the Israelites. He smites the rock and demands the water to flow from it. Joshua says imperatively, sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon. Read the history of all these results, and you find them coming with the imperative or demanding thought of the individual through whom they are done. We repeat again the words, the individual through whom they are done. A miracle comes of a force or thought working through an individual as through a channel. It is not done by the individual, but by the force or thought coming from the Supreme and acting through him or her as steam acts on the engine. The locomotive of itself does not draw the train. It is only a machine for the power of steam to act on and through. We stand in somewhat similar relation to the Supreme Mind. As we demand power of that mind, power will come to us, and work results through us. A thought has power to work results in proportion to the amount of demand put into it. The supreme power puts such force of demand into it, not we. The more of truth in the thought, the more is there of the supreme power in it. The more is there of the quality of demand, and the greater are the results coming of such thought, as it acts and works through the individual. The inspiration which invents or accomplishes great things, or what is called genius, comes of the force of demand. It is an imperative thought, or force, acting on the individual and compelling him to write, to invent, to act or do in some way what never was done before. Such thoughts or forces acting on Shakespeare compelled him to write and express ideas in a material form. He, of himself, did not make those thoughts. They came to him ready-made, nor could he tell how they were made. They came knocking imperatively at his door, demanding admittance and utterance in words. He would have been miserable had he been denied the pleasure of writing them. His works came of the same power which has accomplished all miracles, ancient or modern. That is the power of an idea acting on the individual and demanding expression in some material form. Such thoughts give the individual no rest until he commences working them out. They forced Watts and Fulton to recognize and apply the force of steam. They forced Franklin and Morse and Edison and others to work out the miracles wrought seemingly by electricity. Such thoughts have forced every inventor, every discoverer, every poet, every writer, every artist, to those inspirations and results which are as much miracles as are those told of in the Mosaic and Christ record. They are the commands of the illimitable mind in the limited intelligence, and such commands come in response to the demands of the limited or human intelligence. A greater force of thought than ever is coming to this planet. It is in its nature demanding and imperative. It will show man a new life, a new meaning in life, and a newer and better way to live. It will abolish very much of what we now deem indispensable to our comfort and convenience, for it will show us a better way. When the railway came with its 30 miles per hour, it demanded the abandonment of the stagecoach with its 10 miles per hour. The railroad is the better way until something superior to it comes along. The more we become channels for the supreme power to act through, the more will be done through us. We may become more and more such channels by simply keeping in mind the idea that we are such channels and demanding of the infinite mind to work more and more through us. In healing ourselves, for instance, we need to demand of the infinite mind that a positive, imperative thought of health act on us, but we must not of ourselves try to manufacture such thought or make it imperative. That is the business of the Supreme. If we make such attempts, it is the individual who is vainly trying to usurp the functions of the infinite. We have nothing to do but keep quiet and receive what God sends us. We say in substance to the infinite mind, I demand that your will be done with me. I demand to be made whole, mentally and physically, for holiness is the characteristic of the infinite, and I, being a part of that vast whole, demand wholeness. But I do not prescribe or direct the infinite how I shall get perfect health. I will not say I want my limbs or my stomach or any special part of me made well immediately, for the wisdom far greater than mine acting on me may, for some purpose I cannot now understand, seem to retard the recovery of parts I deem so essential, knowing that much else must be done before perfect health is realized. I demand of the infinite to take care of me. I surrender myself up to that care as I would obey the suggestions of a skilled physician in whom I had perfect confidence. I do not demand of the infinite to be cured by the method I think best. I do demand to be cured in such a way as that higher wisdom thinks best. A thought like this is an imperative force for health acting on you. It comes as demanded of the imperial power ruling this universe. Can you, the smaller part, make it as imperative and powerful as the measureless power of the infinite? A demand like this taps the exhaustless source of all thought and wisdom. It puts you in connection with the measureless wisdom. It brings then from time to time other imperative thoughts to act on you for perfect wholeness and a never-ending health, and is so brought one after another, and they become parts of you, and your eyes are opened to see clearer and clearer. You may be amazed to look through those new eyes with your new mind and see what foolish things your self of the past has tried to command God to do for you. A thought and the act accompanying that thought to accomplish results must be positive or imperative. You cannot drive a nail properly in an undecided, halting, hesitating frame of mind. You cannot send the hammer with any force straight to its mark unless your mind goes to that mark first with similar directness of purpose. You must demand that it goes there with such directness. You pray that the hammer should go in such manner. You pray in every positive act of your life, great or small, and when you pray, you demand. If you pray like a beggar, fearing that in using the hammer it won't hit the nail unless the deity sees fit that it should, the chances are that you miss that nail many times. the element or thought called down in the old-time Methodist revivals, which wrought such peculiar physical results on the participants, came in response to imperative demands made by many people at once, such as these. O Lord, come now. Send down my power now. This cooperate demand made by hundreds at once did bring to them temporarily a different thought element or atmosphere from that in which they ordinarily lived. It stimulated them. It filled them with excitement. It swept over those assemblies a great spiritual wave. It prostrated men, women, and children. It sent some into trances. It filled some with the deepest grief. It filled others with a frantic joy. It was a real thing or force brought to them by means of the power of the demand they put out. Nor did this power or element so generated come until the abject tone of supplication with which the meetings often commenced rose from begging to entreaty, and from entreaty to the positive demand of Lord, come now. Lord, come quickly. It was the cruder working of a spiritual power. It was the same power as that manifested at the Pentecost, when those gathered together in an upper room, all in accord in one place, heard a sound as of a mighty rushing wind, while cloven tongues as of flame sat upon each of them, and they commenced speaking in languages not their own. This power comes not of culture or learning. It came to the Methodist camp meeting of 50 years ago to simple, uneducated people. Today, these manifestations or outpourings of the Spirit are not so common. They are not popular. The strong emotion, convulsions, and outcries of the old revival meeting are not encouraged. The religious revival of today must be kept within certain bounds. The outpouring is checked and regulated to propriety. The more staid and less emotional sects never can bring this force down to act on them because they do not ask for it positively. They do not importune for it. And we find in the history of modern religion that when the sect originating in this enthusiasm and fervor grows away from it, it becomes formal, cold, and dead. We find that the vitality of the churches has from time to time to be restored and drawn from some new sect, always coming of the less cultured and more emotional element, which goes back to a spirit akin in fervor to that of early Methodism and demands imperatively with cries and shoutings for the Spirit to be poured upon them. Such spiritual outpourings come only in response to the call of earnest demand. The spirit of demand is a divine law. It acts on all created things to make them finer and better. It has brought this planet and all things on it from the chaos and crudity of countless ages past up to its present degree of refinement. It cannot be checked. When you would force it back, it returns with more power and in a different form. A great and silent demand is today going out from millions of hearts. Those hearts are silently saying, "Our religion does not satisfy us. It does not heal the sick. It does not give us sound bodies. It gives us nothing tangible concerning a future existence. It makes no new revelations. No signs and wonders accompany the preaching of the word. Our friends go one by one. The grave closes over them, and when we ask of them, we get in reply only the stereotypical generalities." This great, silent demand of many thousands is going out night and day. It is a mighty unseen force, working, acting, and bringing results whether those who make such demands keep it always in mind or not. Forgetfulness for a time of the thing demanded does not lessen the working power of the demand to draw to us the thing demanded. This demand is in many who would not dare tell it even to themselves. We often try to beat back thoughts and longings which come to us, but they do come again and again. They will not be beaten back. They are imperative forces knocking and asking for admittance. They may so come for years before they are expressed in words to others. Perhaps our first verbal recognition of them is when we hear them talked out or written out by another, and then we say in surprise, "Why, I have been thinking those same thoughts for years." This silent demand is to give a higher meaning and interpretation to all forms of present religious beliefs. These beliefs are founded in truth, but truth never stands still. It is ever broadening, widening, and making all things new. Religion, or the law of life, is not as a post in the ground rooted to one set interpretation of the Word of God. It is as a tree eternally living and ever putting forth new branches and leaves. Silent demand works more powerfully than if spoken. The mood or frame of mind which makes it never ceases, though it may at times be out of the material memory. The individual does not create this imperative thought acting on him, nor does he operate it. It comes to him a creation, a force from the supreme power. It works on him and will recreate him in time. The infinite is ever sending thoughts to this planet which change it, and the people on it, into newer and still newer beings and happier beings. They are forces which will not let people fossilize on any treadmill of belief. They make people see injustice and absurdity. These imperative thoughts are as rays of clear light darting into dark cellars. Those rays today forbid imperatively that persecution of one sect by another, which went on in this country 200 years ago. They have changed the hard, relentless, avenging deity of but 60 years ago into a conception more gentle and merciful. They are the commands of the infinite, saying to us, "You must know more of me. You must cease to worship a sound, a word of 3 letters, and worship me by a daily increasing admiration and appreciation of the millions and millions of ways in which I express myself through material things. Demand of me the power, and I will make newer and ever newer senses, which will cause you to see and feel new things and new sensations in leaves and trees, rocks and stones, the sun, snow, and rain. I will so refine you that you shall see and feel powers and forces and things of beauty all about you, of which you now have no conception. I will give you power over your body so that you cannot lose it, and make you realize that the last great enemy to be overcome is death. Man has made for himself a cringing, fawning, self-abasing mood of mind when he would approach God. He has made for himself a God who takes pleasure in being worshipped in the mood of beggary and self-abasement. This deity is modeled after the Oriental potentate, whose subjects must prostrate themselves before him. This deity is modeled after the Oriental potentate, whose subjects must prostrate themselves before him. This deity, who changes little from age to age, is the very result and outcome of man's not demanding to know God. When he demands, the dimensions, the powers, the belongings, the more and more wonderful attributes of the infinite mind, as expressed in earth, tree, rock, animal, the sea, the air, the sun and stars. His conception of deity will widen and ever widen before him as the horizon expands when we ascend the mountain. He will, through such demand, get more and more of God manifested in himself, and have more and more of the Supreme Mind literally materialized in his flesh and blood. When men and women call themselves unworthy creatures and miserable sinners, they are helping to make themselves so. What we think and call ourselves, we make of ourselves. Every man and woman represents a part, an expression of the infinite mind. Every spirit is a part and belonging of the infinite spirit. The infinite spirit holds all knowledge, all power, all wisdom. Then to us, as parts of the infinite, belong knowledge, power, and wisdom, so fast as we can receive and appropriate it. Shall we then beg or supplicate for it? Shall we make a God of whom we are no part and belonging, and humble and abase ourselves before that God, and call ourselves miserable sinners or unworthy creatures, unworthy of his slightest favor, and then beg for that favor? The infinite mind knows no cringing beggary or self-abasement. It would have every man and woman like unto itself. Then why do we hold ourselves as beggars when we ask of it? In so doing, we insult the infinite of whom we are parts. We lessen for a time in so doing the power of the infinite to work through us. To lack respect for ourselves is to lack respect for as much of God as is manifested in the flesh through us. The beggar wants from you something for which he can give no adequate return. He stimulates your pity or sympathy to give him something. As encouraged, his tendency is to depend entirely on beggary in some form or other. Beggary is an untruth and a sin. It is against the laws of the infinite, and proves itself so from the fact that the beggar becomes less and less sustaining. He becomes a leech, open-mouthed, taking in all and giving nothing back. The beggar loses true pride and spirit. He becomes blind at last to scorn, slight, and insult. He is willing to become a permanent object of pity. The Supreme Mind says to us, I command you to bring out more and more the God in yourself. Gods are not slaves or beggars. Demand then of me godlike qualities. Demand of me the power of perfect independence. Demand of me then power to glorify me. In other words, all happiness coming to you through demand makes all things happier. Then you make adequate return for what you get. You cannot command me, the infinite. I am exhaustless, measureless, without beginning or end, metes or bounds. That blind, cringing, fearing spirit, which abases itself before the Supreme, is not reverence. True reverence is based on the amount of our appreciation and knowledge of the wonderful, never-ending powers and qualities in the Supreme. The more of this knowledge and appreciation we demand, the more must we reverence the endless mind, the I Am, and I Am of infinity. The God in you. How to connect with your inner forces. As a spirit, you are a part of God, or the infinite force, or spirit of good. As such part, you are an ever-growing power which can never lessen and must always increase, even as it has in the past through many ages always increased and built you up, as to intelligence, to your present mental stature. The power of your mind has been growing to its present quality and clearness through many more physical lives than the one you are now living. Through each past life, you have unconsciously added to its power. Every struggle of the mind, be it struggle against pain, struggle against appetite, struggle for more skill in the doing of anything, struggle for greater advance in any art or calling, struggle and dissatisfaction at your failings and defects, is an actual pushing of the spirit to greater power and a greater relative completion of yourself, and with such completion, happiness. For the aim of living is happiness. There is today more of you and more of every desirable mental quality belonging to you than ever before. The very dissatisfaction and discontent you may feel concerning your failings is a proof of this. If your mind was not as clear as it is, it could not see those failings. You are not now where you may have been in a mood of self-complacency when you thought yourself about right in every respect. Only you may now, in looking at yourself, have swung too far in the opposite direction, and, because your eyes have been suddenly opened to certain faults, you may think these faults to be constantly increasing. They are not. The God in yourself, the ever-growing power in yourself, has made you see an incompleteness in your character. Yet that incompleteness was never so near a relative completion as now. Of this, the greatest proof is that you can now see what in yourself you never saw or felt before. You may have under your house a cavity full of vermin and bad air. You were much worse off before the cavity was found, repulsive as it may be to you. And now that it is found, you may be sure it will be cleansed. There may be cavities in our mental architecture abounding in evil element, and there is no need to be discouraged, as the God in ourself shows them to us. There is no need of saying, I'm such an imperfect creature, I'm sure I can never cure all my faults. Yes, you can. You are curing them now. Every protest of your mind against your fault is a push of the spirit forward. Only you must not expect to cure them all in an hour, a day, a week, or a year. There will never be a time in your future existence but that you can see where you can improve yourself. If you see possibility of improvement, you must of course see the defect to be improved. Or, in other words, you see for yourself a still greater completion, a still greater elaboration, a finer and finer shading of your character, a more and more complicated distribution of the force always coming to you. So you will cease this fretting over your being such an imperfect creature when you find, as you will, that you are one of the temples of God, ever being built by yourself into ever-increasing splendor. No talent of yours ever stops growing, no more than the tree stops growing in winter. If you are learning to paint or draw or act or speak in public or do anything, and cease your practice entirely for a month or a year or 2 years, and then take it up again, you will find that after a little that an increase of that talent has come, that you have new ideas concerning it, and a new power for execution. You ask, what is the aim of life? In a sense, you cannot aim your own life. There is a destiny that aims it, a law which governs and carries it. To what? To an ever-increasing and illimitable capacity for happiness as your power increases, and increase it must. You cannot stop growing, despite all appearances to the contrary. The pain you have suffered has been through the same growth of the spirit pressing you harder and harder against what caused you misery, so that at last you should take that pain as a proof that you went on some wrong path, out of which you must get as soon as possible. And when you cry out hard, and are in living earnest to know the right way, something will always come to tell you the right way. For it is a law of nature that every earnest call is answered, and an earnest demand or prayer for anything always brings the needed supply. What is the aim of life? To get the most happiness out of it, to so learn to live that every coming day will be looked for in the assurance that it will be as full, and even fuller, of pleasure than the day we now live in. to banish even the recollection that time can hang heavily on our hands, to be thankful that we live, to rise superior to sickness or pain, to command the body through the power of the Spirit so that it can feel no pain, to control and command the thought so that it shall ever increase in power to work and act separate, apart, and afar from our body, so that it shall bring us all that we need of house or land or food or clothes, and that without robbing or doing injustice to anyone, to gain in power so that the Spirit shall ever recuperate, reinvigorate, and rejuvenate the body, so long as we desire to use it, so that no part or organ shall weaken, wither, or decay, to be learning ever new sources of amusement for ourselves and others, to make ourselves so full of happiness and use for others, that our presence may ever be welcome to them, to be no one's enemy and everyone's friend. That is the destiny of life in those domains of existence where people as real as we, and much more alive than we, have learned, and are ever learning, how to get the most of heaven out of life. That is the inevitable destiny of every individual spirit. You cannot escape ultimate happiness and permanent happiness as you grow on in this and other existences, and all the pains you suffer or have suffered are as prods and pokes to keep you out of wrong paths, to make you follow the law. And the more sensitive you grow, the more clearly will you see the law, which leads away from all pain and ever toward more happiness, and to a state of mind where it is such an ecstasy to live that all sense of time is lost, as the sense of time is lost with us when we are deeply interested or amused, or gaze upon a thrilling play or spectacle, so that in the words of the biblical record, a day shall be as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as a day. The nirvana of the Hindus suggests that all the possibilities of life coming to our planet, nirvana implying that calmness, serenity, and confidence of mind which comes of the absolute certainty that every effort we make, every enterprise we undertake, must be successful, and that the happiness we realize this month is but the stepping stone to the greater happiness of next. If you felt that the trip of foreign travel you now long for and wish for was as certain to come as now you are certain that the sun rose this morning, if you knew that you would achieve your own peculiar and individual proficiency and triumph in painting or oratory, or as an actor or sculptor, or in any art, as surely as now you know you can walk downstairs, you would not, of course, feel any uneasiness. In all our relatively perfected lives, we shall know this, because we shall know for an absolute certainty that when we concentrate our mental force or thought on any plan or pursuit or undertaking, we are setting at work the attractive force of thought substance to draw to us the means or agencies or forces or individuals to carry out that plan, as certainly as the force of muscle applied to a line draws the ship to its pier. You worry very little now as to your telegram reaching its destination because, while you know next to nothing as to what electricity is, you do know that when it is applied in a certain way it will carry your message, and you will have the same confidence that when your thought is regulated and directed by a certain method, it will do for you what you wish. Before men knew how to use electricity, there was as much of it as today, and with the same power as today. But so far as our convenience was concerned, it was quite useless as a message bearer, for lack of knowledge to direct it. The tremendous power of human thought is with us all today very much in a similar condition. It is wasted because we do not know how to concentrate and direct it. It is worse than wasted because, through ignorance and lifelong habit, we work our mental batteries in the wrong direction and send from us bolt after bolt of ill will toward others, or enviousness, or snarls, or sneers, or some form of ugliness. All this being real element wrongly and ignorantly applied, which may strike and hurt others, and, will certainly hurt us. Here is the cornerstone of all successful effort in this existence or any other. Never in thought acknowledge an impossibility. Never in mind reject what to you may seem the wildest idea with scorn, because, in so doing, you may not know what you are closing the door against. To say anything is impossible because it seems impossible to you is just so much training in the dangerous habit of calling out impossible to every new idea. Your mind is then a prison full of doors, barred to all outside, and you, the only inmate. All things are possible with God. God works in and through you. To say impossible as to what you may do or become is a sin. It is denying God's power to work through you. It is denying the power of the infinite Spirit to do through you far more than what you are now capable of conceiving in mind. To say impossible is to set up your relatively weak limit of comprehension as the standard of the universe. It is as audacious as to attempt the measurement of endless space with a yardstick. When you say impossible and I can't, you make a present impossibility for yourself. This thought of yours is the greatest hindrance to the possible. It cannot stop it. You will be pushed on, hang back as much as you may. There can be no successful resistance to the eternal and constant betterment of all things, including yourself. You should say, it is possible for me to become anything which I admire. You should say, it is possible for me to become a writer, an orator, an actor, an artist. You have then thrown open the door to your own temple of art within you. So long as you said impossible, you kept it closed. Your I can't was the iron bolt blocking that door, locking that door against you. Your I can is the power shoving back that bolt. Christ's spirit or thought had power to command the elements and quiet the storm. Your spirit as a part of the great whole has in the germ, and waiting for fruition, the same power. Christ, through power of concentrating the unseen element of his thought, could turn that unseen element into the seen and materialize food, loaves and fishes. That is a power inherent in every spirit, and every spirit is growing to such power. You see today a healthy baby boy. It cannot lift a pound, but you know there lies in that feeble child the powers and possibilities which, 20 years hence, may enable it to lift with ease 200 pounds. So the greater power, the coming spiritual power, can be foretold for us who are now relatively babes spiritually. The reason for life's being so unhappy here in this region of being is that as we do not know the law, we go against it and get thereby its pains instead of its pleasures. This law cannot be entirely learned by us out of past record or the past experience of anyone, no matter to what power they might have attained. Such records or lives may be very useful to us as suggesters, but while there are general principles that apply to all, there are also individual laws that apply to every separate and individualized person. You cannot follow directly in my track in making yourself happier and better, nor can I in yours, because every one of us is made up of a different combination of elements, as element has entered into and formed our spirits, our real selves, through the growth and evolution of ages. You must study and find out for yourself what your nature requires to bring it permanent happiness. You are a book for yourself. You must open this book page after page and chapter after chapter as they come to you with the experience of each day, each month, each year, and read them. No one else can read them for you as you can for yourself. No one else can think exactly as you think, or feel just as you feel, or be affected just as you are affected by other forces or persons about you. And for this reason, no other person can judge what you really need to make your life more complete, more perfect, more happy, so well as yourself. You must find out for yourself what association is best for you, what food is best for you, and what method in any business, any art, any profession brings you the best results. You can be helped very much by conferring with others who are similarly interested. You can be very much helped by those who may have more knowledge than you of general laws. You can be greatly helped to get force or courage or new ideas to carry out your undertakings by meeting at regular intervals with earnest, sincere, and honest people who have also some definite purpose to accomplish, and talking yourself out to them, and they to you. But when you accept any man or any woman as an infallible guide or authority, and do exactly as they say, you are off the main track, because then you are making the experiments of another person, formed of a certain combination of elements or chemicals, and the result of that person's experiments, the rule for your own individual combination of element, when your combination may be very different, and differently acted on by the elements outside of it. You have iron and copper and magnesia and phosphorus, and many more other minerals and chemicals, and combinations and recombinations of minerals and chemicals in your physical body than earthly science has yet thought of. You have in your spirit or thought the unseen or spiritual correspondences of these minerals still finer and more subtle, and all these are differently combined, and in different proportions, from any other physical or spiritual body. How, then, can anyone find out the peculiar action of this, your individual combination, except for yourself? There are certain general laws, but every individual must apply the general law to him or herself. It is a general law that the wind will propel a ship, but every vessel does not use the air in exactly the same fashion. It is a general law that thought is force, and can affect, and is constantly affecting, results to others far from our bodies. And the quality of our thought and its power to affect results depends very much on our associations. But for that reason, if yours is the superior thought or power, and I see that through its use you are moving ahead in the world, I should not choose your character of associates or your manner of life. I can try your methods as experiments, but I must remember they are only experiments. I must avoid that so common error, the error of slavish copy and idolatry of another. The Christ of Nazareth once bade certain of his followers not to worship him. "Call me not good," said he. "There is none good save God alone." Christ said, "I am the way and the life," meaning, as the text interprets itself to me, that as to certain general laws of which he was aware, and by which he also as a spirit was governed, he knew and could give certain information. But he never did assert that his individual life, with all the human infirmity or defect that he had taken upon him, was to be strictly copied. He did pray to the infinite Spirit of good for more strength and deliverance from the sin of fear when his spirit quailed at the prospect of his crucifixion. And in so doing, he conceded that he, as a spirit, powerful as he was, needed help as much as any other spirit. And knowing this, he refused to pose himself before his followers as God or the infinite, but told them that when they desired to bow before that almighty and never to be comprehended power, out of which comes every good at the prayer or demand of human mind, to worship God alone, God, the eternal and unfathomable moving power of boundless universe, the power that no man has ever seen or ever will see, save as he sees its varying expressions in sun, star, cloud, wind, bird, beast, flower, animal, or in man as the future angel or archangel, and ascending still to grades of mind and grades of power higher and higher still, but ever and ever looking to the source whence comes their power, and never, never worshiping any one form of such expression, and by so doing making the creature greater than the Creator. That power is today working on and in and through every man, woman, and child in this planet. Or, to use the biblical expression, it is God working in us and through us. We are all parts of the infinite power, a power ever carrying us up to higher, finer, happier grades of being. Every man or woman, no matter what may be their manner of life or grade of intellect, is a stronger and better man or woman than ever they were before, despite all seeming contradiction. The desire in human nature, and all forms of nature or of spirit expressed through matter, is to be more and more refined, is, up to a certain growth of mind, an unconscious desire. The God desire is at work on the lowest drunkard rolling in the gutter. That man's spirit wants to get out of the gutter. It is at work on the greatest liar, prompting him, if ever so feebly, that the truth is better. It is at work on people you may call despicable and vile. When Christ was asked how often a man should be forgiven any offense, he replied in a manner indicating that there should be no limit to the sum of one man or woman's forgiveness for the defects or immaturity in another. There should be no limit to the kind and helpful thought we think or put out toward another person who falls often, who is struggling with some unnatural appetite. It is a great evil, often done unconsciously, to say or think of an intemperate man, "Oh, he's gone to the dogs. It's no use doing anything more for him." Because when we do this, we put hopeless, discouraging thought out in the air. It meets that person. He or she will feel it, and it is to them an element retarding their progress out of the ditch they are in. Just as some person's similar thought has retarded us in our effort to get out of some ditch we were in or are in now. A ditch of indecision, the ditch of despondency, a ditch of ill temper, a ditch of envious, hating thought. Yet the spirit of man becomes the stronger for all it struggles against. It becomes the stronger for struggling against your censorious, uncharitable thought, until at last it carries a man or woman to a point where they may in thought say to others, "I would rather have your approbation than your censure. But I am not dependent on your approbation or censure, for my most rigid judge and surest punishment for all the evil I do comes of my own mind, the God or goddess in myself from whose judgment, from whose displeasure, there is no escaping." Yet as the Spirit grows clearer and clearer in sight, so does that judge in ourselves become more and more merciful for its own errors, for it knows that, in a sense, as we refine from cruder to finer expression, there must be just so much evil to be contended against, fought against, and finally and inevitably overcome. Every man and woman is predestined to a certain amount of defect, until the Spirit overcomes such defect, and overcome it must, for it is the nature of spirit to struggle against defect. It is the one thing impossible for man to take this quality out of his own spirit, the quality of ever rising toward more power and happiness. If you make this an excuse to sin or commit excess, or lie or steal or murder, and say, "I can't help it, I'm predestined to it," you will be punished all the same, not possibly by man's law, but by natural or divine law, which has its own punishments for every possible sin, for murder or lust or lying or stealing or evil thinking or gluttony. And these punishments are being constantly inflicted, and today thousands on thousands are suffering for the sins they commit in ignorance of the law of life. And the pain of such punishment has grown so great, and bears so heavily on so many, that there is now a greater desire than ever to know more of these laws. And for that very reason is this desire being met, and these questions are being answered. For it is an inevitable law of nature that what the human mind demands, that it, in time, gets. And the greater the number of minds so demanding, the sooner is the demand met, and the questions answered. Steam, but a few years ago, relatively met the demand of human mind for greater speed in travel. Electricity met a demand for greater speed in sending intelligence from man to man. These are but as straws pointing to the discovery and use of greater powers, not only in elements outside of man, but in the unseen elements which make man and woman, and the elements unseen which make you and I. Henceforth, our race will commence to be lifted out of evil or cruder forms of expression, not by fear of the punishments coming through violation of the law, but they will be led to the wiser course through love of the delight which comes of following the law as we discover it for ourselves. You eat moderately, because experience has taught that the greater pleasure comes of moderation. You are gentle, kind, and considerate to your friend, not that you have constantly before your mind the fear of losing that friend if you are not kind and considerate, but because it pleases you, and you love the doing of kind acts. Human law, and even divine law, as interpreted by human understanding, have ever been saying in the past, you must not do this or that, or you'll feel the rod. God has been pictured as a stern, merciless, avenging deity. The burden of the preacher's song has been penalty and punishment, punishment and penalty. Humanity is to forget all about penalty and punishment, because it is to be won over and tempted to greater goodness, to purify and refinement by the ever-increasing pleasures brought up as we refine. The warning of penalty was necessary when humanity was cruder. It could only be reached by the rod. The race was blind, and as a necessity of its condition, it had to be kept somewhere near the right path by a succession of painful prods and pokes with the sharp goad of penalty. But when we begin to see more clearly, as now the more quickened and sensitive of our race does begin to see, we need no rod. No more than you need a man with a large club to swing at you in order to force you to go to a feast. Lies breed disease. Truths bring health. What is it that thinks, one asks? There is thought in everything. The force we call thought is not man's exclusive property. The sun is an expression of the infinite mind, and every ray it sends to the earth is full of thought, life, and intelligence. Planet, star, and man are similar materialized expressions of that mind. So are trees, plants, birds, and animals. The same mind and intelligence are in the rocks and soil. There is mind wherever there is life. There is more of this force in a plant than in a stone, more in the animal than the vegetable, more in man than in the animal, more in some men than others, more in the angel than the mortal. There is life and mind in things we call dead. Life, force, movement, mind, or thought pervade the illimitable universe. It had no beginning. It has no ending. It had no origin unless eternity had an origin. It is God, the I am and I am of the biblical record. An idea called death exists in men's minds. It exists nowhere else. The idea of death came of man's incapacity to see further than the ending of one materialized expression of the infinite mind. A tree ceasing to put forth leaves, and its veins to run with sap, he called it dead. But life, mind, and motion remain still in the wood of that tree. That life, mind, and motion are slowly taking the wood to pieces. Man calls this decay. It is, on the contrary, the almighty, all-pervading thought working to put itself in a different form of expression in order to realize in that form a still greater degree of happiness. The same life or mind takes a man's body to pieces when he loses it. If that body was literally dead, it would remain forever as when the breath left it. The idea of death is the first great untruth. The wild oak is one true expression of the infinite mind. That mind in the oak plans the shape and color of its leaves and wood. Mind in the flower plans its shape and color. Mind in the flower seeks and finds the elements which give it color. There is in every expression of the infinite mind, be it animal, bird, fish, tree, plant, rook, fluid, air, or mineral, a mind, force, and intelligence which man can no more originate, create, nor comprehend than he can originate or create himself. This wisdom and force comes of the infinite mind. In the wild plant or flower, it is working out one of its innumerable expressions of happiness in that plant or flower. In the wild or natural animal, it is working out another. Plants, animals, birds, and all things in their wild or natural state have a pleasure of their own in existing. They are true expressions of the infinite mind. When man interferes with them and forces their cultivation, he interferes with the truth, lessens their sustaining power, and lessens their happiness and his own. Plant, animal, and bird have a pleasure in living free of anyone's care, save that of the infinite mind, which works through them. When so working, they are true expressions of the infinite mind. When man interferes with them, they cease for a time to be true expressions. Then they become untruths. Nor does man really improve any tree, plant, or animal he cultivates or domesticates. True, he makes them to suit his comfort and convenience, regardless of the truth that as expressions of the infinite thought, they have a right to their liberty, happiness, and natural life. In their natural state, the plant, the fowl, the animal are self-sustaining. They do not need man's care. The wild goose, for instance, is stronger, swifter, and more symmetrical in shape than the domesticated fowl of the same species. It rears its young without man's care. It knows when and where to seek the warm or colder climate. That is because in the wild state it is left free to live according to the dictates of its own spirit or inherent intelligence. That intelligence and foreknowledge of the wild bird comes directly from the supreme mind. Men call it instinct. It is the highest wisdom and truth acting through that particular expression of the infinite, and when it is left free to act, brings the greatest happiness to that expression. Therefore, the wild bird or animal enjoys its life far more than when domesticated. When animals or birds are taken by man and bred for a few generations, they become weaker, in cases actually deformed, and are subject to diseases from which in their natural state they were free. As fashioned by the infinite mind, the bird or animal is an expression of the truest method of realizing the most happiness for itself. They are expressions of the highest truth. The highest truth brings the greatest happiness in whatever form it works. When man tampers with any expression of the infinite mind and attempts to rule such expression, he robs it temporarily of the happiness which the supreme wisdom would confer upon it. He makes for bird, plant, or animal and himself an unnatural life. He diverts temporarily some physical expression of the highest truth from its true purpose. That purpose is happiness for itself. The symmetrical, swift-flying, self-sustaining wild goose is a truth. It is one expression of the infinite mind for bringing to itself happiness. The clumsy, helpless, domesticated goose, bereft of power of flight and unable to care for itself, is a lie. It represents only what remains of a truth after man has meddled with it. Your canary is doomed to certain death if it escapes from its cage. All self-sustaining power has been bred out of it by man. In its wild state, it was a truth. Man has tried in vain to improve that truth. The hog, in its natural state, is not an unclean beast. It is agile, not clumsy. Man has made this animal hoggish in making it a fat breeding machine. Man sees perfection in breeding it so highly that the prize pig's legs can scarcely support its body. The hog has then become a sample of man's management of a truth. All man's endeavors to improve upon the divine and natural order of creation are errors. When man would fashion the wild bird or animal to his purpose, he interferes with the materialized thought or truth from the infinite mind, whose purpose is the working out of the greatest enjoyment for itself. That purpose man for a time retards. The animal or bird domesticated by man is crippled and its whole enjoyment lessened. It becomes then an error, a materialized untruth. An untruth is a truth turned aside from its true purpose. It can only be turned aside for a time. The infinite power for good goes straight on and pushes aside the error. It will have its own way. All things which man has made artificial, including himself, must in time become natural, a true expression of the infinite. Becoming more natural is not returning to barbarism. The infinite mind, not man, brought this planet and man with it from chaos and crudeness to its present, more refined condition. The mind, that mind, in ways we cannot understand, is going on with that refinement and making man also more gentle and refined. The infinite mind and wisdom insists on making everything happy. Everything. Nothing is left out. The more of the element force or thought of happiness sent out by bird, animal, or plants in their natural state, the more will man absorb and feel it. In time to come, when man learns to let these natural expressions alone, when he ceases trying to convert them into untruths, he will live literally on this thought of happiness as so put out by every natural expression of the infinite. It will be to him the elixir of life. It will give him power to live without slaying bird, fish, or animal for food, without even turning plants aside from their natural life to give him grain. The purpose of life in plants, animals, birds, man, and all things as directed by the infinite mind is happiness for each and everything. The more of such happiness felt and put out by each thing, the more is felt by all things. The infinite intends to fill and saturate its creation with an atmosphere of happiness, not an orgy, but a beautifully organized current of pleasurable sensation ever flowing through us. When we interfere with the divine law in any way, as when we imprison or cripple the power of bird, beast, plant, or ourselves, we lessen temporarily their happiness and our own. We must feel in some way the pain we put on them. We are then reminded by pains and penalties of some sort that we are out of the current of true thoughts. The test of true thoughts as we demand them, and they act themselves out through us, is lasting happiness. The sign of an untruth as drawn to and temporarily acting on us is some form of pain. To demand earnestly true thoughts is to connect ourselves with the supreme power or be one with God. To be as one with the supreme power is to be ever seeing more and more clearly ways, means, and methods for bringing us permanent happiness. Man draws now, to a limited extent, on true expressions of the infinite for giving him happiness. Does the poet go to man's works for inspiration? He has sung most and ever will sing most of the mountains and lakes, the forest and sky. Because, directing his mind on these divine materialized thoughts, he draws from them a literal element which gives him force and inspiration. Going to them in kindness and sympathy, he draws from them literally their intelligence and thought, and adds it to his own. But from this source of pleasure for him he has scarcely begun to drink. In time, man, being a greater expression of the infinite mind, will learn to copy tree, bird, and animal, the lesser expressions of that mind, and do as they in letting that power work through him. He will see very clearly that a wisdom far beyond his own has charge of him, and insists on having charge of him, to carry him to higher and higher states of happiness. He will in spirit hear the infinite mind saying to him, "You cannot make truths. I alone can do that." All the plants, animals, birds, and fish, All things as I made them are good. They are truths. When you meddle with them, you divert them temporarily from their true purpose. That purpose is happiness. You make of them untruths. Untruths bring only pain. Take truths then as I give them to you, and they will carry you to a happiness far beyond your present power to realize. Your ways and methods of life, your slaughter, enslavement, and crippling of birds and animals, your inventions, your machines, your so-called wisdom, your civilization, prove, after all, errors, for they fail to bring what you seek, happiness. You are making your lives more and more artificial and unnatural. Your modes of cultivation are taking life from the soil, putting little back, and will culminate in famine. You pollute the rivers with your factories and sewage. You make an atmosphere in your great cities unfit to breathe. Your struggle for existence grows harder and harder. Your business methods craze men with excitement. Your merchants and statesmen and others snap the thread of their physical lives through the tension in which they live. You are trying to live on untruths, and untruths can only bring unhappiness. An untruth cannot endure. It cannot forever go on adding to itself ever-increasing misery, be the misery that of man, animal, bird, or plant. As man goes on with what he calls the improvement of breeds and species, the supreme wisdom puts more and more difficulties in the way. Disease and epidemics attack the domesticated animals and birds unknown in their natural state. The fruit and grain growers have a constant struggle with destructive insects bred, as it were, from his artificially cultivated vegetation. The highly bred animal becomes more and more difficult to raise, and a greater tax on man's care. At last a point is reached where all so-called improvement of the species stops, because the animal loses the power entirely of having its unnatural life sustained by man's unnatural methods. The materialized untruth cannot go on any farther. When this point is reached, man is obliged to go back to the original type of the animal, bird, or plant, or as near as he can get at it, to replenish his artificially raised species. The breed of fancy rabbits, for instance, must, from time to time, be replenished from the wild of their kind to give them vigor. So even with plants. The more vigorous and natural grapevine of America replenishes the exhausted vineyards of France. Man is obliged to go back to a truth or a natural expression of infinite force to get power to sustain his untruth a little longer. When his care and breeding of bird or animal ceases, they become in a few generations wild, original, and natural. That is the untruth, returns to a truth. Left to itself, it reverts to the current and care of the higher wisdom which alone can create it and sustain it. Any untruth of any kind has constantly to be nursed, and with all its nursing grows weaker and weaker. If we tell one lie, we have always in some way to bolster it up with another. Yet our position grows weaker and more liable to exposure with each lie. Divert bird or animal from the fashion, and life intended for them by the infinite, and our methods necessary to sustain their unnatural life, become more and more forced and unnatural. Your highly bred horses and cattle must be well housed, their food prepared for them with great care, yet they are far less hardy than the animal left to forage for itself. These methods are untruths committed by man in the vain endeavor to bolster up the first untruth, which consisted in diverting the bird, animal, or plant from the life the infinite intends for it. It is the nature of a truth to be self-sustaining. The wild trees of the forest and the wild bird and animal, being true expressions of the infinite mind, prove themselves to be truths, because they rear themselves without man's care from age to age. We shall in time see clearly how this same law applies to us. When we get, as we shall, the courage to trust to the infinite wisdom which insists on making us living truths instead of errors, all things will be done for us. All things necessary for happiness will come to us, as the elements come to the flower to give it its beauty and happiness. We are not the makers of true thoughts, or, in other words, of the infinite wisdom. We are the reservoirs or channels for true thoughts to flow through and work their expressions of happiness through. We shall learn that in the true life there is nothing to do but to keep ourselves open to true thoughts, remain otherwise passive, and let these thoughts do their work. They will give us no idle, sluggish life, but one full of happy activity. They will force us to act happily in art, in poetry, in music, in business, in countless ways we cannot now realize. A bird does not make its music. It holds itself open to the infinite mind, and that mind pours music through it. That is what we shall learn to do to receive inspiration and power for any effort. It is our great privilege to do this more intelligently than bird, tree, animal, or any other limited expression of the infinite, and therefore to get results for happiness far greater and quicker. The spirit is made of the thoughts it draws to itself. I will repeat. The spirit is made of the thoughts it draws to itself. These thoughts it sends and builds into the body. As the spirit aspires or demands true thoughts, it makes its physical body of true thoughts. Only true thoughts can be forever built into our spirits. An untruth, however, can fasten on it, but only for a time. The spirit cannot retain it. It casts it off. It will not build into itself forever anything but truth. Whatever pain, sickness, unrest, or trouble you may have comes of your spirit's endeavor to cast out or throw off some lie or error which, like a parasitical plant, has fastened itself upon it. It will not receive that lie. But you may not know what that lie or error is. All of us are believing today more or less in lies or errors we have not yet found out. We cannot find out these errors all at once. As we earnestly demand truth, the Spirit will send it proportionate to our needs, and as it comes, the errors must go one by one. As they go, the new element of thought forms newer and finer flesh and blood for the body. In this way is the body regenerated. The pain we experience, be it of mind or body, is the Spirit's way of telling our material selves that something wrong is trying to incorporate itself into our eternal beings. The Spirit will not recognize that thing as proper building material. It is a great help to your spirit if you will but entertain a truth, though you may at first not be able to believe it. It is a great help to your spirit if you will but entertain a truth, though you may not at first be able to believe it. We cannot absolutely believe in new truths when they are first presented to us. This should not be expected of anyone. We may credit them. We may wish to believe in them. But absolute belief means acting out and living up to an idea without doubt or uncertainty, and with the same confidence that the navigator has in his compass, charts, and chronometer. This we cannot do until any certain truth is literally incorporated and becomes a part of the physical body. It becomes then literally a part of our flesh and blood. When it does, it acts with the greater force. We do not make a truth, nor do we make it act. On the contrary, a truth comes to us already made. It acts on us and creates results for us. Ideas coming to poet or inventor and built from the spirit into the body force spirit and body to poetry or invention. So, when the truth of perfect health, regeneration, and immortality in the flesh become parts of both spirit and body, they compel belief, and belief compels you to perfect health, regeneration, and immortality. When a truth becomes a part of our material self, a literal belonging of our flesh and blood, we cease trying to believe it. We do not try to believe that our stomachs will digest our food. That power of belief is a part of our flesh and blood, and acts because such belief is literally in the body. The body and spirit of the Christ and others who performed miracles were in such correspondence that the power of their spirits could be expressed through their flesh. That flesh, then, became a conductor or medium for the expression and action of their thoughts. A true thought is a living, moving, acting thing or force, and it may become so strong that it can clothe itself and act in a physical form without the aid of bands. We would call that a miracle. It is only the working of a law we now know little about. As our spirit draws and builds more and more of true thoughts into itself, the more sensitive and alive is it to all untruths. It rejects them the more quickly, exactly as a healthy stomach will reject food unfit for it. This for a time may cause, with the individual, more physical disturbance, for the spirit fully alive to error and reinforced ever by true thoughts is continually driving off the untruths he may have unconsciously held for years. The reason above all others why we should not lie is that the habit brings sickness to our bodies and misery to our minds. Lying does us the greatest wrong. So does any other sin we may commit. When we tell lies either by word of mouth or by implication, we make those lies or crooked thoughts a part of our bodies, exactly as when we receive true thoughts, we make them literally parts of our bodies. If we put only untruths in the body, they will destroy it. The lies we may tell becoming literally parts of the body act themselves out in the body. In the order of the infinite wisdom, a lie or untruth cannot endure. It kills itself. If the whole body is a living mass of untruths, then that body, being a lie, cannot endure. The more lies we tell, the less we are able to see truths when they are presented us. The habit of lying grows so with some that they cannot even tell when they are lying or when speaking the truth, because their flesh is actually composed of lying thoughts. They can no more for the time help being deceitful than a fox can keep from being foxy. Lying is not confined to false statements by means of words. We can tell lies without speaking a word. We can welcome people to our houses when we wish they would not come. This is a lie. We can smile when we are neither entertained nor amused by others. That smile pretends that we are entertained. It is a lie. It has in it the thought of a lie. We can pretend an interest in people's welfare or comfort because they have money we hope to get. That pretension is a lie. We dare scarcely own the real motive to ourselves. We may connect ourselves with churches partly to gain a position in society or help our business. That act is a lie. We may speak from platform or pulpit things which do not satisfy our internal convictions. That is lying. We may say that things are pleasant to us when they are unpleasant. That is a lie. Half consenting to a thing, the consent which says yes when it means no, is a lie. These lies, told in various ways, are so common that we often forget they are lies. But they work their evil results on the body exactly the same as if we knew we were lying. This unconscious lying brings evil to the body faster than conscious lying. It is as poison unconsciously taken into the system, and when a person is blind to the fact that he is indulging in an injurious habit, there is little present hope for him. The habit of lying may fasten on us a spiritual blindness which cannot see the truth. When we are unconscious of the lying habit, we are all the faster building up for ourselves a physical body of untruths, so that at last the material part of us can only see untruths and believe in them. This brings sickness and at last death to the body. Because untruths cannot last, and it is in the divine law that if our physical body gets filled with them and represents only a mass of untruths, they will destroy that body so that its spirit may get one more suitable to its purpose. So the higher law uses what we call evil to bring good. The habit of lying attracts one to lying and liars. For this reason, a confirmed liar will believe another liar quicker than he will one who is truthful. The sharper in one kind of business is often deluded by the sharper in some other kind of business. Being made of lies physically as well as spiritually, they attract each other. In all nature, like attracts like. The person built of lies and the more truthful person are unpleasant to each other. The invisible element and force each puts out antagonize and creates for each an unpleasant mental feeling, while in each other's presence, for truth and error cannot dwell together. But our known and conscious lies form but a small part of the lies we may unconsciously believe in. If we believe them, we act them and live them. If we act and live them, we tell them constantly to ourselves and others. All lies and errors materialize themselves on the body. Any error or untruth held by the spirit makes its expression in the flesh, exactly as the mental condition of a brutal person puts brutality on that face, or that of a despondent person puts gloom on his face. Gray hairs, wrinkles, and all signs of age on the face or body are materialized signs of error. They are signs that a false belief has for a time fastened itself on the spirit. One false belief is that the decay of the physical body is inevitable, and by no possibility to be avoided, and that the infinite spirit has decreed this decay and made it an immutable and never-changing law. This is a lie. It is a parasitical growth of untruth. This untruth is held by all our race. It is believed in so firmly that it is rarely thought of and never questioned. Our minds do literally feed our bodies with the thoughts in them. All thoughts are things sent from the mind to the body, where they are crystallized or materialized into the visible substance of the body. Your body is a thought expressing in visible substance the mind that makes it. If our minds in ignorance try to build an untrue thought into the body, it cannot last. It proves itself an untruth by decay. When true thoughts are sent from spirit to body, they will prove themselves by making life everlasting for the body, as life is everlasting for the spirit. The way out of all these mortal troubles and untruths is so simple, and yet so wonderful. Ask for true thoughts. Ask for power to believe them when they come. Ask for power to be able to believe in a supreme wisdom, not in a half-believing way, but as literally as you believe in the existence of the Atlantic Ocean. Ask persistently and urgently. Don't ask it as a favor of the infinite of whom you are a part. To send you what that power insists you must have and shall have to increase the sum total of his and your happiness. If you make a thing for a man which will ennoble and elevate him and you at the same time, and that thing can only be used for such purpose by that particular man, do you want him to come to you begging, supplicating, cringing for it? In the infinite mind there is neither beggary, supplication, nor dependence. These, then, are untruths. The infinite can hold nothing but truth. The infinite mind insists that our quality of thought shall be as near as possible its quality. That is drawing nearer to God. Getting closer to the Supreme is becoming more and more like the Supreme. Your spirit of earnest demand implies no lack of reverence. Earnest demand is not insolent or insulting demand. The more you realize of the supreme wisdom, the more you must reverence it. But supplication or begging is not reverence. The beggar does not reverence you when he asks you for some money. He does not revere you when he gets it either. The infinite likes and responds to that spirit which says, I demand to be a whole man or a whole woman. I demand to know the right way. That is your right. The infinite mind wants you to know your rights and assert them. It says, these goods are yours. Why, then, should you beg or supplicate for them?